Mike and Houston, we're going to talk about sexual addiction. It's a sensitive subject, it's an important subject, and I'm interested in hearing what you two have to say in particular because of your backgrounds. So Houston, tell me a little more about your background in this area.
Well, I've been working here at Sagemont for the last 8 years, and primarily what I do is I treat individuals and couples in this area of sexual addiction. I also run a group on Wednesday nights for men that are addicted to sex.
You're a professional licensed counselor here at the church.
Yes, I am.
And Mike, you direct the church's counseling ministry, and tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I've been doing professional counseling and Christian counseling, more precisely, for about 25 years, and have seen a lot of couples, mostly, dealing with this issue of sexual addiction. So I'm just thrilled that we're able to talk about it here today because it's such an issue, even among Christians in the church.
Lots of combined years of experience. When you began your practices, did you see this kind of issue as frequently as you do now?
It's been around for a long time, but it seems like it is more pronounced these days, I think because of the rise of the internet. The internet has provided just amazing access to the kinds of pornography that wasn't always there in the past. It was always accessible, but now, with the click of a mouse, I can go visit anywhere, anytime, in complete privacy and anonymity. It's affordable, it's easy to get to.
Do you think folks who perhaps maybe would never have visited an adult bookstore or something like that?
They never do that. That has kept a lot of people away from this kind of thing, but now, because of the internet especially, anybody can access it in the privacy of their home.
You can do it all in private. It doesn't have to be out in the open and where you can be caught.
Mm-hmm. Now this scares me a little bit. I have a computer, so do you. We're on the internet. What are we supposed to do?
Well, I think it's really important to have good boundaries in terms of proactively setting up limits and boundaries in terms of access to that computer. My computer's in a public place. I think that's key for all of us. Mm-hmm. I have internet software on my computer that protects me from the temptations to go pursue and look at things that even I, as the professional counselor, might be tempted to look at. I think it's so important.
And above all, you got to have accountability. You've got to have someone that you can talk to about these things that can ask the hard questions.
In fact, and I'm kind of amazed that we're talking about it even here in the church, because it's the kind of topic that is so stigmatized that we don't talk about it very often, and yet it's so prevalent.
You mean even with Christians?
Absolutely. I mean, the number of people that come into my office, our offices every day, with marital problems, those kinds of things, it's amazing the number of people who are engaging in some form of pornography. Maybe not a full-blown sexual addiction, but in fact, I've seen some statistics recently that 40% of people who are accessing the internet are looking at pornography, at 40%. Least occasionally. So it is rampant.
Is that women as well?
And women as well, but I want to spin off something Mike said, the stigmatism to it. You know, guys tell me all the time, the axe murderer can get up on stage and talk about how Jesus Christ did something in his life and saved him and took that away. But if the sex addict gets on stage, he is immediately looked at as something horrible. How many children has he been molesting?
But Houston, if we talk about these things as openly as you propose, won't it encourage people to engage in the behavior?
I don't believe so. I believe it puts it out in the open.
It demystifies it. It gives us permission to talk about something that's so real. In fact, I think part of the power of pornography is the secrecy.
Yeah.
It's the risk-taking that's involved.
It's the isolation. The isolation that's involved.
So talking about it is so important.
Mm-hmm. So even in a church, somehow when the light is shined on this area, it takes its hold off.
Sure.
But then talk to me about the hold. Why is this? You've used the term addiction. Why is it so habit-forming?
It's appealing. I mean, let's face it. I think pornography is essentially a drug. If you think about it in that sense, it is so appealing. It provides a high. It's habit-forming. The adrenaline rush is very pleasurable.
Are things happening chemically?
Absolutely. Things are happening chemically in the brain. We're not ingesting chemicals like we would taking a narcotic or some kind of a drug or alcohol, but things are happening in the brain. The brain is actually producing a high.
That's why it's so hard to let go of, because it is a natural thing that's happening inside of you. You make things happen in your brain, and it's the adrenaline. Those are things that are inside you. You're not ingesting those drugs, and you're doing it to yourself.
Does this mean the person has to feed the habit much as a drug user would have to?
Exactly. He has to feed it. And it comes to a point where, he gets progressively worse because something that would have caused him to have the same high today won't cause that. So he's got to move up the ante and make it worse.
That's one of the hallmark signs of true addiction. I need more and more and more of it to get the same effect that I used to get. And that's the kind of vicious, dangerous spiral that people get into.
Where might a person move after internet pornography? How do they accentuate the
Might
high?
be fantasy, lust. Maybe I'll start visiting prostitutes. That's in the news, obviously, these days. That's a step above just looking at images.
Extramarital affairs.
Extramarital affairs, where you're dealing now with real people as opposed to just images and fantasies and lust.
Strip clubs.
Now, you're not just talking about sexual temptation, which we're all subject to. You're talking about something that really has a hold on you. Is that what sexual addiction is?
Exactly. It has a grip on you, and there's no control.
But it's an illusion. It provides an escape for a while, temporarily, like most sin does. Let's be honest, it feels good, it's pleasurable, it's powerful. It looks as though and feels as though it's going to relieve me of the kinds of frustrations and stress and anxiety and depression that I have. And it works for a little while.
But
the
after
problem
you
is
do it,
you crash.
Exactly.
And then
after
you need
do
more.
it, you get into
And
the
then
shame.
the whole cycle starts all over again.
So it works, hence it's habit forming, but then it engenders more problems than it was designed to solve. Like what? What problems?
Well, marital problems, you can have legal problems, you can have financial problems, loss of jobs. I mean, there's a lot of companies today that are firing people for looking at pornography on the internet.
It's amazing the number of people statistically that actually access pornography from 9 to 5 at work on a work computer. And that's part of the hallmark of addiction too. When you do things that are crazy, they're foolish. We lose touch with reality, and we get involved to that degree.
You have no degree of tolerance. You just let it go.
I suppose that explains the clumsiness of those involved. They get caught, don't they? Their spouses find out. They see the sites they have visited. And when that happens, can the marriage survive?
Sure, but it requires a lot of work on both parts. The man needs to get in and find out what is going on that makes him want to do that. The woman needs to get in and needs to deal with the hurt and the pain and the grieving and all that's associated with what that whole thing has done.
How long does it take for her to get over something like that?
Gosh, it's not fast. For most people, I think it takes a long time, months.
Do you know of guys
maybe
who want
even
it
years at times?
Do you know of guys who want it to be fast?
Absolutely. We guys tend to compartmentalize things, and we've admitted it, we've dealt with it. Can't you get over it? Forgive me. And I always tell wives, especially if they're the victims of this kind of infidelity, which is what I call it, we want to get them to a point of forgiveness, but I don't want to rush them there.
Yeah.
I want them to grieve. I want them to experience the trauma. I want them to experience the emotions and process those kinds of things. Sometimes I think we do a disservice to people if we push them too quickly to forgiveness because it's superficial at that point. They've got to grieve their loss.
What men don't understand is when they got caught, it ended for them. It's just beginning for her.
So her trust has been violated. He has to restore it. You can't put a time limit on it. And one of the ways, I suppose, in which he can restore her trust is to get some third-party help. Is that necessary? Can the couple repair the damage without any help?
I think most often it's necessary. I think usually it is necessary. Sometimes couples try to do this on their own, but I think the level of devastation, the level of anger and resentment and bitterness and just trauma requires, I think, most often an intervention, I think, of a professional who can help facilitate that rebuilding of trust, establish good, healthy boundaries.
What if they're both not willing? Only one party is willing to
Well,
come?
I think you start with the party that comes in. You have to work with them and work through their issues. A lot of times the wife will send the husband in. You know, you got to get this taken care of or we're done. So he comes in, and you start working with him and start working through his issues. And hopefully, as she sees changes in him, she will join and get on board with
But
that.
I like personally, I like to get the couple in as quickly as I can because I think it is a couple issue. It has impacted both of them. As Houston said, a lot of times, maybe the wife doesn't even want to come.
Yeah.
Sometimes she needs to come by herself, actually, because she's been so traumatized, and she needs to work through that kind of resentment and anger and deep hurt that she's experienced.
The mainframe is broken, the cancer spreading faster than usual. What used to be beautiful has been replaced by funeral music. Dead men walking, listening to dead men talking.
What happened was you can't hide that inside you forever. And so it began to come out in different ways and to consume me more and more. And I became really dissatisfied in my marriage because that pornography in my mind was reality, and that's what my marriage was supposed to be like.
I thought something was wrong when he just, he started working more, which I know wasn't his fault. But when he would come home, he was just really grumpy and disconnected. He didn't want to talk about his day. He didn't want to really talk to me.
So I came home and told Tanya we were buying a computer, that I needed one for work, and we couldn't afford it and didn't need one, but I did it anyway, knowing the real reason was that I needed the internet so I could get pornography. And it wasn't long after that that Tanya walked into the bedroom one day and she saw a pornographic screensaver that I had.
And I was just in shock. You know, it's like they say about a wreck, you want to look away, but you can't. You know, what did I do to deserve this? And why is he doing this to me? How can I make it stop?
I was going to check the weather on the computer and something else popped up in the address bar. I thought, what is this? And I clicked on it, and then, dumb me, clicked on something else that takes you to something else. And have no idea if that's where he had been, but the initial site was just definitely something.
The internet is a really tough thing because it's right there in your house, and it's just too accessible to a man, a boy. It's just too easy. And then the next thing you know, you will stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning and go to the same websites over and over and over and over again. And then you realize you have a problem because then you start hiding and you're tired and you know, that type of thing. So then you realize, you know, that this thing's got you don't have it.
I don't know what time I went to bed, but I didn't sleep. And I don't know why I didn't wake him up then or hit him. I waited till his alarm clock went off at 4:45, and I said, I think all I said was I found something, and he knew exactly what I found.
He just said that he was sorry. He struggled with it. He would try harder, that we could work this out.
And I told her it was all her fault. There's nothing wrong with it. Everybody did it. You know, if it really bothered her, I wouldn't do it anymore, knowing the whole time that I was lying to her.
And I said, you know, maybe we should get some help for this. And he said, no, if you want to, you can. That'll be fine. But we can, it'll be okay. I won't do it anymore. And then I found it again.
I had bought a hardcore pornographic video, and she was going through the trash looking for a receipt to return something to a Walmart or Target or a store, and she found the box that it came in.
You know, some women, they would say, oh, it's not his fault. It's really okay. It's not that big a deal. And I just knew I had to do something now, or it was never going to end, and I would never be happy, and that I would hate him forever. And I didn't want to be in a marriage like that.
And I rushed home, just all in a turmoil. How am I going to lie my way out of this? How am I going to get out of this?
And he said somebody from work gave it to him, and I had to tell him, and it was the hardest thing I ever did. I had to say, you're lying to me. I don't believe a word you're saying. And he stood there and looked at me, and I didn't know if he was going to tell me to get out. I didn't know if he was going to hit me. Not that he ever would, but I didn't know that. I'd never seen that face before.
I looked at her, and my whole life just flashed before my eyes. And I thought, this is it. this is the decision that you're going to make. You're either going to turn away from her and you're going to flush your second marriage down the toilet. You're going to be consumed by this, or you're going to turn and you're going to fight it and you're going to get help. And I finally decided enough was enough. It was probably that day and the weeks afterward, probably one of the worst periods of my life as I started to dig this junk out of me, and the best day of my life.
Being caught is a relief because it just changes the whole way that you have to go about doing things.
I'd never had any reason whatsoever to doubt anything he'd ever told me. At that time, we were married 21 years and never thought he had ever lied to me day one.
I mean, I can remember the morning and telling her, I'll do whatever. Well, to my wife, whatever means, she got on the phone that day and started calling people and, trying to line things out, which she was going to fix it in one day. And of course, it doesn't work that way.
We had just, a couple of weeks before, gotten a magazine in. Can't even remember the name of it. It was a men's magazine, a men's Christian magazine. And the whole issue was on pornography. And I found that magazine and I called every 800 number in there and talked to anybody who would listen to me. And what do I do? How do I fix this? And where do we go from here?
I really didn't know if I was going to have a marriage to come home to. So I called Sagemont the next day, and I said I need to see a counselor. And the lady said, well, what do you need to see him about? I said, I have a problem with pornography. And she said, oh, you need to talk to Houston. I'll make you an appointment. So that's how it all started. I walked into Houston's office and confessed. Such a weight was lifted off my shoulders. And I look back at our marriage, and it's just like, man, I squandered so much. I wasted so much time. I took things that were supposed to be sacred and cherished and personal and things that were only for me, and I just spit on them and threw them away.
I remember how crushed you guys were when you first came in. And, you are so different today.
It was very hard. I don't like to be an emotional person, but I just broke down probably every session. and to show somebody that I hurt that way, it was difficult.
Sagemont was just right on target. I mean, they dealt straight with the issue, things for the children to be involved in while we were there. Sagemont was just a great place to be.
The counseling part of it, I didn't really know how that would go. And I said I would do anything. And I did. I went wherever, to whoever. But God put me with a group of guys that were all a lot like myself. Chris was a big help because he was there for a second time. And that said a lot to me. I was like, maybe I was into it more than I thought I was. I was in Dallas a couple of weeks ago. So I was in the hotel room by myself. First thing you go into a hotel room now, the menu comes up. You can get your adult movies right there in the thing. So I had to really stay out of the room. Of course, staying out of the room, I went walking, and I was like, Chris, well, I could go buy a magazine. I could go anywhere. Nobody knows me. Dallas has a club like Hooters here, and it's called Twin Peaks. It was just really a struggle not to go in.
Like you pointed out before, you have to look for your way out. And sometimes it comes in, different ways than you're accustomed to. It does require taking the time to pray, taking the time to think about what you're going to do, when you get there.
And it's so important that we talk. And talk when there's nothing wrong.
I'm so afraid to go back to where I was. And sometimes the thought of giving in isn't as strong as the thought of going and facing those guys. Sometimes that's what keeps me on the straight and narrow is that accountability because, they'll love you, they'll pat you on the back, but they'll whop you upside the head and say, stupid, what'd you do that for? You knew better than that.
The accountability factor is a very positive thing. He often gets calls from his guys in the group, and he often calls them And it's a real positive thing that I can see.
Tell me how your wife has been handling this issue.
We don't talk about it. Actually, probably one of my biggest problems is we really don't talk about it much. And not that well, I guess I am ashamed of it still, but it's just things I'd rather not talk about with her.
Do you think Sandra thinks you're lying, or again? I mean, but if you're not talking about it, you're
Oh, I think that. But yet, Chris, in a way, it's like I just wish I could just throw it away and it not come back. And one of my worst things that I know I do is I just don't say anything, which is really bad for a lady.
I mean, I know how you feel because I hate talking about it with Tanya, but I really make myself because I'm afraid she's going to think I'm lying to her again.
And I know Chris has taken a lot of time and a lot of years to develop that relationship with his wife.
But she's not my primary accountability either. I mean, she helps me when I'm in a pinch, and I have to be honest with her about if I've failed or I've succeeded. But what Tanya will hear is, man, I had a rough day today, and I had to call Houston and talk with him a little bit, and I'm all right, but I just wanted you to know what's going on because, let's face it, she loves me and she cares about me, but she doesn't really understand.
That's where we get it in the light, and it has no power over us anymore. And if it's just looking at girls in the supermarket, then it's looking at girls in the supermarket. If it's watching videos at the hotel room, then that's what it is. But we have to get it in the light. And otherwise, it consumes us, and then we start into the cycle.
Happens more than anybody would ever imagine. And if it just helps somebody take that step to deal with the issue, then it's all worth it.
It was worth the trouble and the pain. It was very hard, but if we didn't go through this, we would still be who we were then. And I would be clueless, and he would be angry. And we would never move forward in our marriage.
You just know that for your family and for yourself, more for myself, I've learned that I have to do it for me. If my wife left me and my kids were gone, and my mom and dad didn't have anything to do with me, that I would do it for me. That's a tough spot to get to because I never thought I was that worthy. And that almost sounds self-centered and selfish. I was talking earlier about being selfish. You have to know your self-worth, that God loves you enough that He entrusted in Chuck, He entrusted in me, that I can make it. And that every whit of energy that I expel in trying to maintain, God instills way more than that and gave everything for me.
Don't wait. Get help now. Talk to somebody. Talk to a pastor. Talk to a friend, a trustworthy friend. Go see a counselor. Go to a group. Don't wait, because it will destroy you. It will consume you. I know nothing can separate us from Christ. I know our salvation is secure, but it will make your life miserable. You're going to hurt the people you love. The cost is tremendous. We don't want to believe it, but it'll cost you everything in the end.
Sexual temptation is nothing new to man, but pornography has become accepted in our culture as normal behavior. Sex sells, and as a society, it's all around us. It's hard to get away from it. Before you know it, we've let it creep into our hearts and our minds and our marriages. In Romans 8, Paul tells us that to be carnally minded, to be wrapped up in fleshly desires, is death. But to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Pornography will bring death to a relationship, to a marriage, to a family, and to a society. God wants His children to have so much more. God wants us to have eternal life, but He also wants us to have joy and peace in this lifetime. If you or someone you know is dealing with sexual addiction, call us here at Sagemont. We can direct you to professional counselors specifically trained to deal with this particular issue. We want to help in any way that we can to provide godly counsel that will guide you to freedom from addiction. Our counseling is personal, professional, and confidential. This is a safe place to hurt.
Filled with anger. Became just, I got an attitude on me like I was just it. I was the only person in the world that mattered.
Pornography is very selfish, it's all about me, because it's you and a million other women, you know. If it wasn't true, then pornography wouldn't be as addictive as it is.
And a lot of times I didn't really care what Tanya thought. And if I did, it was her problem. You know, she was the cause of the problems, not me.
This guy we're talking about who's gotten himself hooked on pornography, does he have a spiritual problem? Does he have a sexual problem? Is it all of the above?
Well, I believe it's all of the above. He's got a sexual problem because of what he's doing, but he also has a spiritual problem because he doesn't realize that whatever need he's trying to fulfill, God can heal that. Mm-hmm. And he's trying to fill that hole in his heart with something other than God.
And in fact, I usually tell people that really what we're talking about when we look at pornography is it's idolatry. It's a form of idolatry. It's looking for something outside other than the Lord to medicate, to help relieve pain, ease stress, provide pleasure. That's idolatry.
Because the world just says that it's okay. You know, they're not cheating on you. It's just a TV show. It's just a magazine. It can't hurt. But it really hurt me.